Hey everyone, it's Charlene. Today I'm going to be doing a card with stitching, which is a first for me. I have here the felt floral beehive, and these are for felt pieces, but you also can cut them out of paper. It has all these different dies. You have a beehive, there's a little door, bee wings, the body, and then a lot of different floral pieces to go along with everything. So I'll start by cutting out all of my pieces from pretty colors of paper that I like. I've picked out all of my colors. I'm going to cut the greenery from fern cardstock. I have some cardstock here in fawn for the main beehive, pitch black cardstock for the bee body, white cardstock for the wings, beeswax for the yellow stripe details, and for my florals I have here wildberry, dahlia, and blush. And then I do have a piece of truffle here as well for the entrance to the beehive. So I'll go ahead and cut all of these out. I purchased this large pack of embroidery floss because I've never done any stitching and I wanted to make sure I had lots of different colors. These are really cool because they're multicolored, so the colors change as you go along the strand. The piece of embroidery floss, if you're not familiar with it, contains 6 strands. So I'm separating this out so that I have 3 strands because 6 strands is too thick. And to separate these out, it's a good idea to put your finger in between the 2 sets of 3 and then kind of pinch it and pull just like this. Makes it much easier. You want to use an embroidery needle. I'm not sure if this is an embroidery needle. Hopefully you have one. I think it is. It is fairly dull and it has a large opening which makes it easy to thread. I'll start by pulling my thread through all the way through on the beehive piece. You can start anywhere you want to. I'm going to start with the rose, and then I will take a little piece of tape and I'm going to tape the tail on the back. Now all I need to do is go back and forth all the way along this line. So I'm going in through a hole and then coming back out through the next hole. And I'm going to work my way all the way across here. Once I'm done, I'm going to go back in the opposite direction. You could leave it with just the single stitching like I have here, but with the full stitching where it looks like there's a full stitch row, it looks really pretty. I finished that first line, so then I went ahead and finished the entire beehive piece. It does take a little bit of time. This beehive in particular is very detailed, but it keeps your hands busy, helps to pass the time. I could see you sitting down in front of the TV or something like that and relaxing and just having something to keep yourself sort of busy with your hands. I love how the thread color changes. You can really see it here on the beehive. It looks really, really cool. And I'll move on now to the door, and I'm going to use that same brown color, stitching it all the way around. I'm starting by taping my tail on the back so that it'll stay in place, and then I'm going to stitch all the way around the entire door piece. Once I get all the way around going, in and out through each hole, then I will go back in the opposite direction so that way I get the full stitching line going all the way around the edge. Once I finish that last loop, I'll show you how I tie my larger pieces off. So I still have that tail taped in place. I'm running my needle underneath the piece and then pulling it out and putting it through the loop that was created, and then I can pull it tight. So I'll do it a second time, and that's what's going to create a knot that ties off the string that we started with and our end of our string, and it holds everything nice and neat and in place. Very easy to do with the larger pieces. I do it different with the smaller pieces. Once it's tied off, I can easily remove the tape and then just bring in my scissors and trim off those tails, making sure not to trim too close because I don't want it to unravel. So there's our little tails on the back and our finished piece. It looks so nice. For our bee, I'm going to take this smaller yellow piece and I'm going to lay it over the black body. Now in retrospect, this would be easier to do by gluing the small piece first on top of the body. If you're working with felt, felt tends to kind of naturally stick together by itself. Paper, not so much. So quick and easy tip when you are sewing paper together, you might as well glue it in place so it doesn't move around on you. But I went ahead and finished adding the 2 little yellow stripes. Now I'm working on the wing, and I'm doing this by starting through the bottom hole and then going through the top hole and then coming back through the bottom hole. And I repeat that 3 times, once for each of those top 3 holes there. And you get this cute little detail of 3 stripes on the little bee wing. I repeated it on the second wing. There's a couple of different ways you can do the smaller floral pieces. What I did on these is I put a little tape to hold my tail, did my stitching, removed the tape, and then I just added a dollop of glue on the back and used my reverse tweezers to hold everything in place while it dried. For this next part, we have these lovely greenery pieces. I have them laid out where they're going to go on the beehive. And here's where I realized, hey, use your brain, Charlene, and glue it in place to make things easier on yourself. So I have everything laid out. Now I can just add glue to the back of the greenery and lay them down where they are supposed to go. When you're working with felt, it's pretty easy to figure out where you need to go when you are bringing your needle through the back, not so much with paper. So I'm going to poke holes with a sharper needle, just poking through where those existing holes on the greenery are. So then I can see on the back where the holes are. So I pulled my green embossing thread through here. And again, I'm just using 3 strands, but I am looping through twice because I decided that I wanted to build up those loops and make them really prominent on the greenery. I did that with the small buttons as well. You'll see in the final product. So I finished all of the greenery. Now you can see all of my little tails tied off back there. Now I am working with 2 small leaves, which I did off camera just in the same way I did the small florals. And I put a leaf on the bottom right and left hand side of the door to the beehive, and then took one of the 3-point florals and I'm gluing it directly in the center. Now I've got some foam squares here because this is paper, right? So why not give it some dimension? And I've added my door popped up in the center there. I'm going to do the same thing here with the small floral blooms using a tiny little foam square, and I'll add the tri-point blooms here on the right and left. And then the other 3 flowers, you can see there are these little buttons, which I don't know any way to describe them other than buttons. And I added my thread off camera for these, and I'm just gluing the buttons to the center of the 5-point florals here. And then I'm adding a foam square to the back of each of them to give them some dimension and putting them right over those other 3 greenery pieces. I'm also popping up my sweet little bee as well as the wings, making sure to keep the wings somewhat close to the body so they look connected. Now for those tails on the back, I wanted to make sure that once I have this on my card, they didn't stick out. So I just added a little glue and kind of smooshed them over. I've got a piece of windy cardstock here that's cut to 4 by 5 1/4 inches to give us an 1/8 of an inch border all the way around, gluing it to the front of an A2 sized card base, foam strips on the back of our beehive, and then centering it in the center of that card panel. I put together a sentiment from a separate set that I have, and I'm gonna put it right underneath this flower here, adding some white enamel dots just to fill in some of that negative space. And now I'll give you a close-up look how beautiful this is. I think this would make a lovely keepsake. It's so elegant. Anybody who receives this card would be impressed. I did make a second card this one with the felt berry blossom dies because I wanted to show you that with these felt dies, you don't have to do any stitching. I did 0 stitching on these. I just used them as I would any other kind of die, but you have all of those stitching holes and it creates this really fun detail on the pieces. So either way you do it, you could do a quicker card or a more complex card, but they are a lot of fun. All right, I hope that you picked up some tips and tricks today. Please be sure to like and subscribe, as well as hit that notification bell so that I can continue to bring you more crafty content in the future. Until next time, happy crafting.